So I want to get into a lot of the work that you're doing, but obviously earlier this week, big debate, a lot of critique of each side of the moderators. I was shocked that culture wasn't brought up as an issue. We had seen like a day before the debate, Kamala Harris had this ACLU questionnaire revealed where she talked about wanting to use taxpayer dollars to pay for the transition surgeries of illegals. There's a lot of stuff that's obviously going on in schools, and yet nothing about culture and society in the debate. Was that shocking to you? Or do you think ABC intentionally wanted to keep her away from that?
It wasn't shocking to me at all. I mean, this seems like the setup. If you go do a debate at one of these major networks, it's going to be a pile-on. You know, it's 3-on-1. I don't think that even people who don't like Trump believe that it was an unbiased, debate. I don't think that's the case. What I've always said would be really fun and I think exciting for the American people, and you would get some real questions, would be if you allowed candidates to choose the moderator that asks the questions to their opposing candidate, because then you would at least know that the opposing candidate is going to get questioned on the things that matter to people, right? So, last night looked a whole lot more like Kamala Harris's campaign team came up with the questions. It was basically like, Mr. Trump, why are you so terrible? And then Kamala, what do you think about Mr. Trump being so terrible? I mean, you're not going to get a real substantive debate out of that. It's just a pile on with the hope that Trump's going to snap and say something crazy, which didn't happen. Trump kept his composure pretty well. And I think just, there had to be some natural frustration with the fact that you're facing a 3-on-1 situation.
Yeah, I actually think it was like 100-on-1. It was 3-on-1 on the stage, but you had all those behind the scenes folks at ABC also on his team. Let me ask you this: is somebody, and I want to get into your work, because why I wanted to talk to you today was that you've been very successful, and I think you give us a roadmap as to how we can win. If you were Trump, one of the things that I got to say is he agreed to this. He bought it. Now, he bought in with Biden, just to be clear, right? And then they did the old switcheroo, the push her out and bring her in. But the question I have for you is, what should have been the tactic? Should he have just said, I don't care, I'll debate her anytime, anywhere. It can be ABC, CBS, NBC. Or should he have fought more for rules that made it a little bit more neutral?
I would have fought for rules that made it more neutral, but rules that people, the general public, would think are great. Like what I just said just now, your average American would think that's a wonderful idea, right? I mean, it's very clear debates have been broken for a long time. Now, if I was on Trump's team and I was, asked for advice on sort of what his approach should be, it would start with that. Number one, you've got to set the rules here, okay? Because you just won the last debate. They're the ones who changed out with a candidate that has never received a primary vote in this election, and really needs to prove to the American people what they are. And if she decided not to show up to the debates that you offered, what I would have done is I would have shown up, done it myself, and I would have made the entire debate about going and showing the American people what her policy positions have been for many years. And I really explicitly believe, Sean, that this election is going to come down to one very simple question. Are the American people, the majority of them, dumb enough to believe that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have changed their lifetime of far-left radical policy and suddenly become moderates who are pro-border wall, who have guns, they're gun owners, they love guns, and they don't want illegals here anymore, and they hate crime, they were never for defund the police. All of this stuff, suddenly they're making this right-wing shift because they're hoping that enough people are stupid enough to believe that after a lifetime of far left veering into Marxist policy in most cases, they've decided, we're actually super MAGA now and we love patriotism, America rocks. We're talking about the people who did nothing but villainize and demonize the United States of America throughout the BLM riots. As the cities were burning, Walz and his wife were sniffing in the burning rubber and thought that was some beautiful poetic thing. In reality, it was the celebration of the destruction of the America we all love. And you need to hold them accountable for that. So I would have shown up on that stage, whether she was there or not, and I would have made and prosecuted the case that really Kamala Harris is the closest thing to a modern day Marxist. And I would have made the argument of how dangerous that is going to be for our country. And I would have shown people that she is a flip-flopper that you cannot trust. And most importantly, I would have begged Trump, begged him, do not take the bait. It is the number one thing that they are hoping for, is that she's going to be able to get a rise out of you. And it only really happened one time where she was able to get a little bit of a rise out of him. And I think that that's the thing that is going to matter in the next debate. If they do another one, is he's got to just, cancel out what she's saying and prosecute your case. No defense, all offense. Tell the American people who Kamala Harris is and define her with her policies and actions in the past, and make sure you are in an arena where if they're going to fact check anybody, they're going to be fact checking her the same way they were fact checking Trump last night, with a lot of bogus fact checks, might I add. But you need to be in a place where she is going to have to face the music, whether it be via you and there's no fact checks involved, or whether it be that there is an actual fair moderation panel that includes fact checking for all, because Kamala Harris was allowed to lie last night with impunity, and that is on ABC News. And I think the real loser of last night's debate, again, is the legacy media, who increasingly people do not watch or trust.
Do you think there's a second debate?
I hope there is, because I think there's a case still to prosecute to define Kamala Harris. A lot of people, it's well over 30% of the American people do not know what her policy positions actually are. That is enough to not just swing the election, but make it a landslide. And so if Trump can be the person that defines who Kamala Harris is, we win. Because her policy positions in the past have been absolutely patently absurd. We're talking about something who wants to take money out of hardworking Americans' pockets and pay for illegals to get sex changes, federal prisoners to get sex changes, to adopt things like Tim Walz did in Minnesota, where they put tampons in boys' bathrooms. We're talking about a misuse of funds, of what I would argue is really transnational fraud. And we've seen this year over year from the Democrats. We need to tell the story and define them.
Yeah, I felt like, first of all, I'm intrigued. I hope there is a second debate. I just don't know. I mean, she gets it. She won't do Fox because she's scared. Trump said earlier that he'd be willing to do NBC. I feel like he's walking right back into the same trap again, and they're going to do exactly the same thing. I felt like, I give her credit, and I say this because here's what I think her strategy was. She said 5 things, right? She went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your suit sucks. And then he said, my suit's great. They're made by these tailors and da-da-da-da. And she got him to basically say, whatever the first 5 things I just said were, you basically aren't going to attack, because I'm going to end whatever I say with something like, your hotel smell. And he was like, what are you talking about? I get 5 Michelin star ratings and they're great. And da-da-da-da. And he took the last thing she said. And I think that you could tell that through the prep that she did, she realized whatever the last thing you say to him is the first thing he's going to respond to. So she realized she could get a pass on 1 through 4 or 1 through 5, as long as I end it with something that you will respond to. And she did it every single time, where it was like, boom, 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 boom. Your administration killed more birds than dogs, right? And he would be like, I love birds. And that's where he erred, I think. He should have pivoted right back to her every time.
Yeah, the other thing too, for me is he should not agree to an NBC debate unless there is that exception of he gets to choose one of the moderators, and it does not need to be an NBC employee. And they're not going to do that. But that type of fairness is something that your average person understands, especially after this debate, where you say, you know what, yeah, I'll go on your turf. I'll go to CNN. I'll go to NBC. But there needs to be one moderator who is not a part of this machine. And if the debate does not happen, then at that point, and you have been the one that tried to set these terms, you set up your own event and honestly make it a spectacle. Invite every celebrity that supports Trump. Make it something people want to watch. And more people will probably watch that, even if Kamala doesn't show up. And you will then have the opportunity to define who she is to the American people. Because again, if you watched last night with David Murr or whatever his name is in control, you had, and let's say you don't follow politics really closely. You would have left that debate thinking that she loves guns, that she believes we need to shut the border down, that there are no abortions at 8, 9 months. That just doesn't exist. And again, this is just ignorance of the law in our country. There are many states where you can have abortion all the way through that 9th month. Okay. But the moderators didn't step in and fact check and say, no, Kamala, actually, you're wrong here. They didn't force her to answer the question. She skated out of the question and didn't answer it at all. When Trump turned around and asked, hey, do you support abortion at 9 months, at full term? She would not answer it.
And
in
they let her go.
Debate, that wouldn't be possible.
Right. And they let her go. They were like, next question, hurry, let's get on to this. All right. I want to move on to your work. like I said, the overarching thing that I love about it is I get asked all the time when I go to speak to groups, like, what can we be doing? And my answer is, we actually, if we push back, if we expose them in a logical and methodical way, we do win. And we've got to start doing more of it. And that's frankly what you've been doing. And for the people who aren't paying it, who don't know about your work, you've been very, like, follow Robbie on Twitter. Go look at what he's done, where he identifies basically leftist policies, DEI policies at major corporations, exposes them, and then they retract them. Okay, so the list is long. Okay, Coors, John Deere, Tractor Supply Company, Brown-Forman, Lowe's. Okay, I'll go on. But the Wall Street Journal said this of you. In that sense, this is referring to your work, Mr. Starbuck and his whistleblowers are doing companies a favor by warning them of the potential lawsuits to come. They are also steering companies back to their fundamental mission to focus on increasing shareholder value rather than politics. Let me put this simply, more simply than the Wall Street Journal. Companies should focus on what they do. If they're a service company, focus on the service. If you're a tax service company, do really great things preparing taxes. If you are Coca-Cola, make good beverages. Like, I don't understand where we went off track on this, but let me just walk through kind of where I wanted to get with you. How do you find out about these things? How do you find out that these corporations are adopting these policies?
Well, the employees reach out to us. That's the biggest part of this. Okay, we've got well over 5,000 whistleblowers that have reached out to us. There's some crossover there where people are at the same companies, but they'll send us, what the policies are and kind of what's going on. And these whistleblowers want people to know that these companies have veered dangerously off course. And here's the reality: most of the companies we expose, we will rarely go and highlight a private company, and we really only do that when they take government dollars or there's some sort of weird, crossover where it makes sense. But with public companies, you're talking about companies that have a fiduciary duty to shareholders. So if you're a company that has even a 15% conservative consumer base that comes in your stores regularly or purchases your products regularly or your service, you are doing wrong by your shareholders by adopting these far left policies. And to be clear, the policies we're talking about is many of these companies, I'd say the vast majority in corporate America, have been sponsoring truly outlandishly sexual pride shows. They've been supporting youth transition, so children sex changes, like supporting that whole transition process from puberty blocker to hormones, even double mastectomy coverage, right, that some of these companies have for children. And they're working with outside groups like the HRC, who, it sounds absurd to call them the Human Rights Campaign.
Which is the Human Rights Campaign, right?
It sounds absurd. It's like, putting a bill in Congress, it's, vote yes if you love puppies act. And then inside the bill, it says, yeah, we're going to kill puppies. That's basically the equivalent of the Human Rights Campaign being called that. But the HRC has something called the CEI score. A CEI score is basically a social credit system for corporations that if they want 100% score, then they need to do all of these far left policies and shove them into reality within their corporation. So that includes having a concierge for your LGBTQ plus employees, doing a certain number of events for them, and putting the flags up in your office, so on and so forth. And there's all these crazy things. You wouldn't believe it all if you saw it, and we would be here for way too long. But these groups work explicitly with these major corporations. Walt Disney gave the HRC millions of dollars, and they were just at a gala a couple days ago where the HRC president said Donald Trump hates America. So they are supporting that type of rhetoric. And that's something that your conservative consumer for a long time has not been fully aware of. And so our job is take the values of these companies, put it together in a bite-sized form, and inform people on how far left corporate America has veered and how much they hate your values, and then challenge the corporations. Do you want us to continue to walk through your doors? And a couple of these companies, they tested us. They wanted to call a bluff, and it didn't work out because we were a damaging force economically. People stopped going to the stores. They couldn't hold out longer than 3 weeks. In Harley Davidson's case, they tried to stick to their guns with their woke CEO. And as Bloomberg reported, at Sturgis, the largest bicycle rally in the country, maybe the world, where 90% some odd of the bikes there are Harleys, Harley Davidson had to shut down their tents 2 days early because it was such an embarrassing lack of turnout where people, they were at Sturgis. They just would not go to the Harley booth. Okay, it was a ghost town. I posted photos of it, and it was a total embarrassment for them. In fact, it was the Daily Mail. They called this a total rebellion from Harley riders. And so, this turned very quickly for them because we showed these corporations we are a movement that has teeth. We actually do bite if necessary. We don't want to. We just want to fix things. We don't want to destroy anything. We would like to fix American companies and bring them back to former greatness, which looks something like neutrality, where everybody can go there and shop and not feel like their values are being attacked with the very dollars that they spend there.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.